In this video, we will be going over 3 6-mark questions from GCSE Chemistry, which are commonly poorly answered. Let's jump straight in, and this question is about Earth and the atmosphere. It reads, this Earth and its atmosphere today are not like the early Earth and its atmosphere. Then it has 2 diagrams, showing the early Earth and the Earth today. The question asks you to describe and explain how the surface of the early Earth and its atmosphere have changed to form the surface of the Earth and its atmosphere today. Pause it here and try and have a think what you'd put for this question. Now, there are 2 ways you could potentially prepare for a question like this. The first being you could go through your revision guides and all your class notes and just memorize step by step the process that they give you there. Or what you can do, and what I would do and what I did when I did my GCSEs, is that I went through the mark schemes and see how they detailed the process, and how they detailed the process is exactly kind of what you want to write down to get the marks as efficiently as possible. So let's go through the mark scheme and maybe you can take some pointers of what to learn from this process. And to get 5 to 6 marks for this question, you need to have a description of how at least 2 of the changes have occurred. One of them being oxygen increased because plants or algae developed and used carbon dioxide for photosynthesis or for growth, and therefore in the process produced oxygen. And don't forget to also write down that through this process, the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere also decreases. Another change that you could have put was that carbon dioxide decreased because oceans formed and this dissolved or absorbed the carbon dioxide. You could have also added that carbon dioxide became locked up in sedimentary or carbonate rocks and or fossil fuels. Another change that you could have put down was that oceans formed because the earth or water vapor cooled and water vapor in the atmosphere condensed. Another one could be that continents formed because the earth cooled from forming a supercontinent. Another one would be that volcanoes reduced because the earth cooled, forming a crust. And the final possible point would be that nitrogen formed because ammonia in the Earth's early atmosphere reacted with oxygen. And if I was you, I'd make a note of all these points and memorize them, because if this question comes up again, then you know exactly what the previous mark scheme asked for. So it's very likely the future mark scheme could be very similar. The next question we're going to go through reads, explain why chlorine is a gas at room temperature, but sodium chloride is a solid at room temperature. Now I'm going to ask you all a question and I want you to put this in the comments. What is sodium chloride commonly known as in everyday life? So let me know if you know the answer to that, but in terms of this question asks you to include a description of the bonding and structure of chlorine and sodium chloride in your answer. So let's go through the mark scheme for this. So the mark scheme splits this into 2 sections. So the first section is talking about chlorine and the second is talking about sodium chloride. When talking about chlorine, these are the sort of points we want to put down. That there are covalent bonds between atoms, forming simple molecules, and that there are no bonds between molecules, and it has a low boiling point. And in terms of sodium chloride, it wants you to put that it has an ionic bond or multiple ionic bonds. There is an electrostatic attraction. There are strong bonds in all directions, acting between oppositely charged ions. That's exactly where the electrostatic attraction comes from. And this forms a giant ionic lattice. And the final 2 points you could have put were that large amount of energy is needed to break the bonds. And due to this, it has a high melting point. My overall advice for that question would be to be as concise as possible, but also make sure that you're linking each point together and that you're talking about both chlorine and sodium chloride. The next question is a titration question and it's linked to the practical. And it asks you to describe how the student could use the apparatus below and the solutions in figure 3 to carry out titrations. Pause it here, have a look at the equipment yourself and have a think, what would you put for this question, and see how many marks you would have got after we go through the mark scheme. And what I've seen from students that I've tutored or my team have tutored in the past is that students, because they've learnt this titration experiment and they want to kind of show off or prove to the examiner that they know this experiment, what they do is they write down the entire process. A lot of them still do link it to the apparatus, but what you're better off doing is just literally answer the question as it is. The question asks you to talk about the equipment, so talk about the equipment and what you'd use it for exactly, because that's where the best and the most concise answers are going to be, leading to the best marks. So these are the points that the mark scheme explains. So the first one being acid in the burette or flask. Secondly, the alkali or the sodium hydroxide or acid in the burette or flask. Also that the pipette is used to measure the volume of acid or alkali. Indicator in the flask. White tile under the flask. And because they're talking about how you can use these to make the titration, you also want to add a few more details such as slow addition when you're adding more, swirling or mixing. Also that the color change of the indicator is important to be able to get the result of the titration, and also that the burette volume is measured. Now, do you see how the mark scheme doesn't need you to explain every single step and why you're doing that? It just wants you to literally say what the step is, link it to the apparatus, and any more detail that will help complete the titration. So you shouldn't have to ask for more paper from the invigilators like some students have done for this question. Just keep it nice and concise, to the point, and easy for the examiner to pick out the marks to award you. That is another important point, because remember, the examiner is just human and they probably marked hundreds of papers before getting to yours. So make sure that the points are laid out in such a way that they are so easy for the examiner to award you and he can just move on to the next question. The last thing you want is that you wrote so much unnecessary detail for this question that the examiner's missed out the mark that was actually there and hasn't awarded it to you, and this could cost you an entire grade. We have so many more of these videos of different types of questions coming out, so if you'd like to see us make those, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to be the first person to see them. And as usual, if you'd like to book a free taster lesson with my team of tutors, then the link is in the video description. Thanks for watching, I'll see you on the next video.